So what are you deciding on that issue? Are we making it a close?
Eagles thing?
Application?
Yeah.
I see that, yes.
Ken needs another club like a whole.
Yeah, he's
kinda short on clubs lately.
He needs more to do.
Social obligations are just.
He doesn't have enough to do.
Nothing to do. All right, ready? Good evening, board members and residents. I'd like to call to order the regular board meeting for Monday, October 28, 2013. Will everyone please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Mr. Witt, will you please take the roll call?
Yes, Mr. Brado?
Here.
Mr. Capral?
Here.
Mr. Swikowski?
Here.
Mr. Tominello?
Here.
Mr. York?
Here.
Mr. Witt? Here. Mr. Verkust?
Here. Thank you. Next on our agenda is the approval of the consent agenda, including the approval of the regular board meeting minutes from October 15th, 2013, approval of the bills in the amount of $736,592.18, and approval of the September 2013 revenue and expenditures report.
Make a motion to approve the consent agenda. Support.
We've got a motion by Mr. York with support by Mr. Tominello to approve the consent agenda. Is there any discussion, board members? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Next is the approval of the regular agenda. Board members, we've had some discussion, well, actually at least about one item. I know a board member mentioned a second item. Item D5 is relative to a contract that we might possibly approve with Wade Trim. I would like to propose that we might move that up to, or basically we'll say switch items D1 and D5 in respect for Mr. Newmer's time.
Why don't we move it up further than that? Just put it under like B2 or something.
He's gonna have to stick around for C2 anyway,
Oh, okay.
so.
Okay.
So I would propose that we swap initially, anyways, items D1 and D5.
Okay.
And then I believe there's still a need to discuss item D2. So I don't know that we'd want to remove that, but I believe the action that this board may take may be different than executing the contract as discussed. But I don't know that there's an agenda
We'd like to move
revision.
that up to item B2, and then the chief can.
I suppose.
At his time, I don't know. Are you planning on staying the whole meeting, or? Okay.
Well, I don't know that it matters in the agenda. If the board has a preference, we could certainly move item D2 to item B2 if there's no problem with that.
Seems fair.
All right, so we'll move item D2 to B2.
Make a motion to approve the regular agenda with those changes.
Support.
Got a motion by Mr. York with support by Mr. Swikowski to approve the regular agenda with the changes of moving items D1, D2, and D5 as discussed. Is there any discussion? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, board. Next is announcements. We've got a few announcements, sort of a busy time of the year, so I'll read those now. First, a reminder to all residents that the yard waste pickup will stop on the last scheduled pickup day in November. Yard waste pickup will resume on the first scheduled pickup day in April. So yard waste pickup runs through the duration of November, and whichever is the last day that you have curbside pickup in November, that will be the last day for pickup of yard waste. A rededication of the Veterans Memorial will be held Saturday, November 9th at 1 p.m. Please join us right outside the boardroom here where we'll honor our community veterans and dedicate this newly replanted and refurbished memorial. Our summer shuttle is still in operation on the weekends. Friday from 5 p.m. until midnight, Saturday from 9 a.m. until midnight, and Sunday from 9 a.m. until 5 p.m. For a free ride anywhere in the township, please call 586-612-4454. State Representative Anthony Ferlini will be hosting a Community Shred Day on Friday, November 8th from 9 until 11 a.m. at the Tucker Senior Center parking lot. This is an opportunity to help prevent identity theft and dispose of all your old documents safely. Shredding is available for free for anyone who has 2 standard size bags or boxes. A fee will be charged for any additional bag or box over 2, and plastic materials are not accepted. A Senior Brigade Town Hall Tour hosted by the Michigan Attorney General's Office will be at the Clinton Township Senior Center Friday, November 1st, and at our Tucker Senior Center Friday, November 15th. Both events start at 11 a.m. Please join Representative Anthony Ferlini for a presentation on residential care choices. Presentation topics will include how to choose a nursing home or healthcare assistance, how to recognize and report resident abuse or neglect, and tips for keeping loved ones safe. For more information regarding Community Shred Day or the Senior Brigade Town Hall Tour, you may contact Representative Anthony Ferlini's office at 888-DIST-024 or email at anthonyforlini@house.mi.gov. Our Harrison Township Public Library is hosting multiple events through the month of November. A presentation on what is sand will take place on Saturday, November 9th at 1 p.m. This program will include hands-on activities. Story Hour, Saturday, November 9th from 11 a.m. till noon. The theme for this month is Family, Food, and Friends. Book Planters Craft Day will be Wednesday, November 13th at 10 a.m. Join us and learn how to turn an older book into a beautiful planter. All materials will be provided. Book planters make an excellent holiday gift. Tales with Tales will take place on Saturday, November 16th from 11 a.m. until 12:30 p.m. Children will get the chance to practice their reading with Patty, a licensed, certified, and insured therapy dog. Each child will get 15 minutes to read to Patty. Pre-registration is required. To register for library events, please call 586-329-1261 or stop in the library and sign up. Also, please remember for all library events, all children must be accompanied by an adult. And of course, for further information on all of these events, you can contact the supervisor's office or check the township website. Are there any other announcements? Hearing none, we'll move into our next item on the agenda. That's item B1, approval to purchase a new copy machine for the fire department in the amount of $5,057. Chief Lopez?
Yes, sir. Good evening, board members. Our current copy machine is about 13 and a half years old. It's in very bad shape. It's been on its last leg for quite some time. We've been for the past year kind of getting by really with the help of the service agreement and having the service tech out routinely to keep it going. We've gotten to a point now where they just don't have adequate parts to even maintain it anymore, and we've lost the function of the top feed feature and other things. So with that, we've undertaken some research to see what our options were for replacement. We contacted 3 different companies with options. They gave us 7 options of copy machines to look at. And along with that, then the other decision between the supplier, the model, is whether to purchase or to lease. And while there are advantages to leasing, primarily the lease option keeps you in a cutting-edge machine. The other side of that, though, is we were able, with this last machine, to get 13 and a half years out of it. And I think that the added cost of lease for our use at the fire department, where we don't make, comparably to the township, that many copies, we think we can get more bang for our buck by purchasing the machine and letting it go well beyond its lifespan like this last one did. So we opted towards the purchase rather than the lease for that reason. And then along with that, when we look at the seven models, a number of them were pre-owned models that we really didn't feel comfortable with, going with the pre-owned based on the number of copies that were already on the machines and the fact that we wanted to purchase it and try and get maximum life out of it. So when we eliminated those, we looked at the new model copy machines. We felt the one that best suited our needs was the Toshiba E Studio 356. That machine, that's I think it's cost effective. It wasn't more machine that we needed, but it gives us all the features that we need. We did opt for the added fax feature because we do rely on fax quite a bit with our operation between the two fire stations. And our current fax machine, actually the quality of that has gone down quite a bit. It's probably going to be needing to be replaced, so this would help us out with that as well. And with that, we've also, the company that sells the Toshiba Premier Business products, that's who we worked with our past copy machine, and we've been extremely satisfied with the service they've provided. Like I say, our service rep that comes out, I think he's gotten us an extra year and a half out of that machine just by the same day service and being so responsive. So we're very comfortable with the service that this company provides. They're local, they're based in Troy, they're pretty much same day service for repairs. So for that reason, that's the option we went with, the Toshiba E Studio 356 to purchase with the scan feature from Premier Business Products in Troy, Michigan.
All right. Any questions, board members?
Make a motion to purchase the Toshiba E Studio 356 copy machine with built-in fax option from Premier Business Products for a total cost of $5,057 with a full-service maintenance billed quarterly at .0125 per black print.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Support.
We have a motion by Mr. York with support by Mr. Brado to purchase the copy machine. Any discussion, board members? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you, board.
Thank you, board members. And if I could, I'd just like to acknowledge my administrative assistant, Kelly Gemmel, and thank her. She did a lot of the research on these, so couldn't have done it without her help.
Excellent. All right, next on the agenda was item D2. We've moved to B2. Board members, the contract for Fire Chief Lopez is set to expire November 2nd, 2013. We did discuss the contract at our last meeting, and we've spent some time going back and forth with the attorney. As it has been discussed by some board members, or at least indicated, there was some concern that due to the short and tight time frame of having a chance to look at the contract and still make a decision today, that there may be some merit in extending the contract for a 30-day period. We discussed the matter briefly with Chief Lopez, and he was in agreement. That would give us time to bring this back at a future board meeting, presumably the next board meeting, when we'd have a chance to review the contract, address all issues with the appropriate time frame. So if there is a motion to that effect, I'd entertain that now.
I'll make a motion to extend the current contract with Chief Lopez 30 days and for the supervisor to negotiate a successor agreement to be brought back at a future meeting prior to the expiration of the extension.
Support.
All right, we've got a motion by Mr. Witt with support by Mr. York to extend the contract 30 days. And again, just for the public record, Chief Lopez, that's agreeable with you?
Yes, sir, that's agreeable with me. Thank you.
Okay. All right, any discussion, board members? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? All right, motion carries. Thank you, board.
Thank
Next
you, board
on the agenda from the clerk's office is item C1. Mr. Witt?
Yes, we received a request from Consumers Energy for a new franchise agreement for their gas service that they provide to the township. Our current franchise agreement with them is part of our code of ordinances, and the 30-year agreement, the previous 30-year agreement will expire in March of next year. So Consumers has provided us with new ordinance language to continue this franchise. It is a revocable franchise, so if for whatever reason in the future it can be looked at again. The township attorney has reviewed the ordinance and is comfortable with its language. So at this time, I guess I'd make a motion to introduce an ordinance granting Consumers Energy Company, its successors, and assigns the right, power, and authority to lay, maintain, and operate gas mains, pipes, and services on, along, across, and under the highways, streets, alleys, bridges, waterways, and other public places, and to do a local gas business in the Charter Township of Harrison, Macomb County, Michigan, for a period of 30 years, and to publish notice introduction at the Charter Township of Harrison, and that the full text may be reviewed in the clerk's office during business hours, 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m., Monday through Friday.
All right, we've got a motion by Mr. Witt to introduce the ordinance. Is there support?
Support.
All right, support by Mr. Caprell. Any discussion, board members? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, will that take a roll call vote, please?
Yes. Mr. Witt, yes. Mr. Caprell?
Yes.
Mr. Brado?
Yes.
Mr. Swakowski?
Yes.
Mr. Tominello?
Yes.
Mr. York?
Yes.
Mr. Verkest?
Yes,
Ordinance is introduced.
excellent, thank you. Next on the agenda, item C2 regarding CDBG funds. Mr. Witt?
Yes, recently we were contacted by Macomb County because we currently have an unspent balance of $46,721.85 from our 2012 Community Development Block Grant allocation. This money must be spent by the end of the year, otherwise it's in danger of being recaptured and we wouldn't be able to use it. This money was originally allocated by the board to the demolition of blighted properties in the amount of $30,000 and senior center improvements in the amount of $16,721.85. The demolition allocation will not be able to be spent in time due to some of the requirements that the HUD puts on the process. It's a rather lengthy procedure, and when we were given the properties under consideration, we just wouldn't be able to meet the time frame to get that done. The other item, with the senior center allocation, this was leftover money from previously approved projects that are done, came into the budget, or under what our initial projections were. Currently, we're working with the township engineer and the water and sewer superintendent to identify a project that'll fit in this time frame, so we can get it done by the end of the year, and with Macomb County to get the project, make sure it's an approved expenditure. Unfortunately, the individual at the county who's going through the process of approving this is on a long weekend, and we won't get an answer back until Wednesday. So the project that we're looking at doing, and Mr. Newmer can probably explain it a little bit better, so I'll let him do that.
Good evening, board members. Met with Mr. Axtell and Mr. Witt. We talked about several different projects we could use to make good use of this money. And the project that came to the top of the list was to do some rehabilitation at the Jeffers Court Storm Pump Station. This pump station has a couple of problems that need to be addressed. The most significant is there's an open ditch waterway that drains the water to the pump station, and it's got a bar grate in there that keeps the leaves and the sticks and stuff from getting into the station. Unfortunately, there's several large trees right above it, and they fill up with leaves, and it's a constant maintenance problem with keeping the leaves and sticks cleared out of the way so that the water can actually get into the station and get out. Mr. Axtell told me that this last summer, when they had a couple of back-to-back significant rain events, that they had to have people out there in chest waders with water up to their chest, basically trying to get those cleared out to get the water into the pump station and pump it out. And there was a significant area of flooding there that was close to threatening some homes. So this is kind of a high priority project. It's in the area that's eligible for block grant expenditures, in the census area that's in the eligible. So we would be cleaning out the ditch. We'd be replacing the bar, the trash grate. We might look at doing some ditching around the station, So in high water conditions, if it does back up, the water would have a way to overland gravity feed rather than going into the pump station as an emergency measure. And then we're also looking at doing some minor maintenance to the station, replacing the hatches and some of the small mechanicals that need to be updated on the station. As Mr. Witt indicated, this is a project that needs to be done in a very short time frame. We'd be looking at getting a plan and a contract book put together, getting this out for bid in the next week or so, as soon as we get a determination from the county that it's an acceptable project.
There was also some fence work possibly, depending on what the budget holds.
Yeah, there's a large willow tree right next to the station that we may look at taking down, and that tree has grown into the fence and kind of damaged the fence a little bit, so we look at securing that fence and replacing it with something a little more secure.
So to move forward with the project, what we would be looking to do is we have to make an initial approval to direct the engineer to go forward, design that bid project. And if it gets the approval through the county and that kind of thing, this would also cover the engineering work, the construction administration. It'd be $5,000 to Wade Trim, and it would cover those costs. That can't come out of the block grant monies because it's a engineering services. It doesn't qualify under the federal program. So we would have to approve that, and then Mr. Newmer would prepare that bid packet, it would go out to bid, and then it would come back to this board for final approval before we move forward with the project. So then we would make that determination of which bidder we move forward, what the scope of the project is, given the way the bids come in. I know it's sort of a if-come right now, but we didn't want to delay making a decision about reallocating this to the project should the county approve it, and we end up being another 2 weeks behind on the project, so.
So there's initially two things, or I should say, there's two things that that we know to ask today that we may not have known, or you may not have known, say, a week ago. One issue is allocating $5,000 for the engineering and the bidding of the project. And then the second amount is presumably it's important to understand that if $5,000 is what it takes, for example, to engineer and bid this project, that's money that we're gonna have to spend no matter what. That this pump station needs rehabilitation. We're hopeful that we can utilize monies that are at risk of disappearing due to tightened timeframes from the county. If we can, then we'd allocate those dollars. But if we can't, we've at least spent the engineering toward getting the project done. So there's really, I guess, two motions that you might see that are in order. One is to allocate $5,000 for engineering. The second would be to allocate these CDBG dollars toward this project pending acceptance by the county.
Correct.
And just maybe a point to add to that, in the event that for whatever reason, the county may come back and say, we don't believe that project qualifies. It's our intent to say, all right, well, can we modify the scope so that it does qualify? Or can we look at another project? Right now, we don't want to lose those dollars. This isn't our last chance effort, but we know that the time frame is tight, and for things to go smoothly, these are federal dollars. There's a lot of oversight, a lot of extra hoops we have to jump through to spend the money. So we want to try to allocate those dollars if at all possible. And there's nothing to indicate that the county won't accept that, but we need that final determination.
Yeah, she felt confident because it's modifying an existing item. It's not gonna go under some of the same review processes that installing something new or removing a structure might go under, so.
Any other discussion? Go ahead.
I do. When it says we are, who is we? Might I ask?
Which we are you referring
Oh,
to?
in the
Says
second-
we are working with the water and sewer.
We
Oh.
are working. Who is we?
Me. I'm sorry, I guess I went with the royal we.
Oh, okay.
When you're writing, sometimes you get caught up, and I just I've been talking to Dave about it, and when you're writing,
It
you
just
sort
says
of
we
you
are
sort of
working
edit
with-
things and come up with a wrong word that you left in before. So
Well, that leads me to my next question. Frank and I are on the CDBG committee with Jan. Are we just not doing that committee anymore, or what's the status of that?
you know, what, next time
The-
we
I
get an
mean, I mean-
allocation, I'd be more than happy.
Well,
I
no,
wasn't trying to
I'm fine
exclude
with the
anyone.
allocation,
Or,
I'm just, you know.
yeah, no, I apologize.
I mean, if we're gonna get rid of that committee, that's fine, you know, I just wanna know where we stand.
Yeah, I mean, we really didn't have the project put together until Thursday
I mean, we
last
always
week.
move these around, I mean,
And-
you know, I don't mind,
Yeah.
I don't mind that we're bringing this, but it would've been nice to, you know, maybe Frank and I, you know, hey, as members of the committee might have, you know,
Yeah, and we won't get
you know that I
another.
would consider you a de facto member because Jan's no longer here, I
Yeah.
would just consider you a voting member.
No, that's fine.
Anyway,
Yeah, we won't get another allocate. They changed the way they allocate the money, so we only get it every 3 years now. So
Right,
we didn't
right.
get, we don't get any in 13. We don't get any in 14. We'll get some in 15. So
Right.
we'll just have to make a note that when we get that 2015 allocation, that we all have to sit down and figure out how we want to spend that. But yeah.
well, then I would, I'm sorry.
Well, and I was just gonna say, I know that this wasn't necessarily the only project that you looked at or asked the county to consider. I remember there was something about a sidewalk.
It was a
something
really
about
fluid process with the county trying to figure out what would work and what wouldn't work in the time frame that we had. So it was sort of like shooting ideas at her, saying, how about an extension of the sidewalk? Nope, that doesn't work because there might be the great American toad living in the ditch there, so we have to make sure we do an environmental review that takes 4 months. Or the demolition, they had to go through the state historic building office to make sure that they weren't listed under the National Historic Register, and that took 3 months.
Well, I mean,
So-
I want to be honest, Jan did most of the work. The committee, we sat
Yeah.
down and she said, this is, you know, this is what we got. And Frank and I pretty much said, okay.
Yeah.
We did some brainstorming.
You know, we did a little brainstorming, but I mean, Jan, or the clerk, you know, did most of the work, you know,
Yeah.
on behalf of us anyways. So.
So I guess what he's telling us, he's hoping that you're gonna continue to do most of the work.
No, my
Well, he
question is,
has
are
so
we
far.
gonna get rid of the CDBG committee? That might be for a later date, you know, whatever, you know.
All right.
All right, well, I'll make a motion to allocate or reallocate $46,721.85 from C 2-08-2C demolition of blighted properties and C 2-08-28 senior center improvements as recommended.
And then we
And
$5,000 to Wade
to
Trim.
allocate $5,000 from the 999 or general fund account. Would that be correct, Glenn, the 999?
Well, there's drain money.
We have
Oh,
the
is there drain money? Okay, then.
Yeah, it's
Yeah.
stormwater, there's stormwater.
Okay,
account.
then, and approve the $5,000 for engineering from the stormwater fund
For Wade Trim.
for Wade Trim.
Support.
All right, we've got a motion by Mr. York with support by Mr. Swikowski to reallocate the $46,721 from CDBG dollars and also to authorize $5,000 to Wade Trim for the engineering and bidding of the Jeffers Court storm pump rehabilitation, if that's a fair restatement of the motion. Discussion, board members? If not, we'll open up the floor for public comment.
Bill Saraville, Builder Member, Housing Board of Appeals. While I understand, I've talked to Darren about this, and he's explained as much as he knows about it, that it's a real pain to try to use this money, the $30,000, for the demolition of the houses, and it may be prohibitive no matter what. But you just stated that next year there won't be any CBG money available, correct? So my question is this board going to allocate any money for demolition? We have houses waiting. VJ only got a bid on one because until that money came through, there's no sense in getting bids from spinning demo contractors' wheels, getting bids for demolition if the money wasn't there to do it. So going to have to look at that because we do have a blight problem. So, thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other public comment, we'll close the floor for public comment, move back to board comment.
We did not get any allocation this year in 2013. We will not receive any in 2014. We will receive an allocation in 2015.
And it's
And-
3 times, right?
Yeah, it'll be, it's in theory, 3 times the amount that we normally got.
Right.
Unless, Congress decides to not fund it at all and then we get nothing, so.
Okay. And specific to another one of the issues with that demolition is the likelihood that we spend dollars on demolition. I shouldn't say the likelihood, but the conditions under which we would spend dollars for demolition would be to include a lien placed on the property. So if we demolish a home and it costs $9,000, an unsafe structure, we're gonna lien that property for $9,000. The CDBG process requires you to now have that money paid back, and there's a separate
You
bank
have to
account.
track it in a separate bank account and then
Right.
reutilize it in a similar fashion.
Right. CDBG dollars, as you explained, relative to demolition, would be for city-owned properties where nobody else would be paying that back. Say, for example, in a city where people have walked away from an entire block, and there's a need to clean that block up so that it could be redeveloped, that was the intent of the dollar. So that's one issue. Relative to demolition of properties, I think this board still, has that interest in supporting Housing Board and addressing blighted properties as they are brought forward. So I can't speak for the board, but I know that certainly, as we've discussed before, if we can get a property owner to clean up their own property, that's our first desire. But we are reaching that point where property values are exceeding the value that involved in demolition. And if we do demolish a structure and we do place a lien on the property, we're likely to be able to recoup those dollars when the property eventually sells. Any other discussion? Hearing none, we've got a motion by Mr. York with support by Mr. Switkowski to reallocate the $46,721.85 from previous CDBG projects to the Jeffers Court storm pump station rehabilitation, and to authorize $5,000 from the stormwater fund to have Wade Trim engineer the project and manage the bidding process. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, board.
Thank you.
Let's see, next is what was originally D5.
No,
C3.
C3.
Oh, I'm sorry, I skipped right over it, must have stuck to the bottom, I'm sorry. C3. Yep, there it is, thank you. Mr. Witt?
Yep, this is the appointment of deputies policy that we've discussed a couple times here, based on board feedback at the last meeting. We just amended it to make a change that the results of the drug screen or criminal background check would be the only thing that would be sent along. The pre-employment physical would just be something that would stay in the file, wouldn't be subject to review.
All right, any discussion, board members? I know we have discussed this at length in the past.
If it doesn't pass or go down this time, let's just not bring this back. This is the third board meeting that it's been at.
I'll make a motion to adopt the policy concerning the appointment of deputies as presented.
All right, we got a motion by Mr. Brado, is there
Support.
discussion? Or, I'm sorry, is there support? Mr. Tominello? All right. Discussion? Hearing none, we'll open up the floor for public comment.
Bill Servio, resident. At the end, it says, should an individual refuse to submit to the information, that's, I think that language is wrong, or is rejected in a process, the elected official may still select the individual as deputy with no compensation. Now, I hate to sound like a broken record, I'm gonna reiterate, if an employee actually sits in a chair and they occupy that space, you have to pay them something. I'd suggest if you're gonna go through with this nonsense, that at least you change it, that the board has the right to renegotiate the salary for that person. You can't not pay somebody that works. I think if you ask the attorney, he's gonna tell you the same thing. You can appoint someone that doesn't work and they don't get paid, but I'm assuming you want a deputy there. Well, you got 3 full-time deputies now. Are you gonna have 2 full-time and one that doesn't ever show up? They show up, they gotta get paid. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other public comment, we'll close the floor for public comment, move back to board comment. Likewise, I hate to be a broken record, but there are several communities in Michigan that have appointed deputies that do not receive compensation. It is an option, so it is not a requirement that we compensate an appointed individual,
It is if they work.
so.
Yeah,
Any other-
I mean, in those communities, in Shelby, and I know Shelby's one of them, I mean, that's really an in-name only, in all honesty, in those communities. In our community, we have chose, or whatever, probably the decision was made 50 years ago, long before any of us were on this board, that we would have what I would call working deputies.
Mhm.
They come to work, they work, and they're really an employee, just like any of the other ASME people.
True, true. And that decision made 50 years ago, if it were, does not bind this board from making any appointed deputy an employee. That's what this, basically this policy is addressing. The appointment and the employment are responsibilities that are separated in Michigan law, so.
Well, right, I mean, I'm not gonna make a big deal of it, but
Right.
I'm gonna tell you that if somebody comes to work, you're gonna have a big old problem with wage and hour at the end of the day, and there's been several communities out in Oakland County that's happened to, and the deputy actually, I know one community where the deputy ended up winning the case.
Fortunately, the board sets the hours that a deputy can work, so we can prevent that should that become a
Well, I
problem.
understand, I'm just saying.
And
that
I
it's
doubt
open
we're
for-
ever gonna need to do it,
Well, we're
frankly.
hoping not.
That's right. That's
There's
ultimately the
the
goal.
operative word that the way I read it, may.
Right.
And I
May
guess
still
it
say-
boils down to if somebody doesn't pass the drug screening
Correct,
or the background check,
right.
and that person still decides to appoint them, you don't want them in the building anyway.
Right.
Probably not.
You know, I mean, so it's the
Yeah.
problem, you know.
I know I wouldn't
Absolutely.
appoint somebody at that point, but I
Nope.
can't speak for anybody else.
Sure.
Yep.
And that's what we want to avoid, so, having beat this one, I'm sure, darn near to death, is there any other discussion? If not, we've got a motion by Mr. Brada with support by Mr. Tominello to adopt a policy concerning the appointment of deputies as presented. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Next on the agenda is item D1, which was initially item D5. Board members, our township is eligible, or I should say, communities in Michigan are eligible for a stormwater asset management and wastewater, or SAW, grant. The program provides 90% grant funding for projects of up to 1 million and 75% grant funding for projects 1 to 2 million. After discussions with Wade Trim and our water and sewer superintendent, we see there's definitely some projects that the SAW grant funds could be used for within our township. So I recommend that we adopt or pass a motion to have Wade Trim prepare the SAW grant application and related services not to exceed $6,000.
So moved.
Well, actually, I wasn't, okay, I'm sorry, yep. Motion by Mr. York.
I can think of, being here 9 years, I can think of 100
Hold on one second,
projects.
Yep, yep,
Support.
Oh, I'm
yep,
sorry.
yep, okay.
Well,
All
this
right.
is over 90%, bring it on.
That's right. So we have a motion by Mr. York with support by Mr. Witt. There probably is some value in having Mr. Newmer give us a brief explanation of whatever strings might be tied to this grant. And explain, certainly say that application for the grant comes with what requirements, we can accept or refuse.
Yep, okay, great. First of all, I'd like to thank the board for the consideration moving the item up, I appreciate that. As the supervisor indicated, there are some strings that come with this money. We're looking at applying for 3 different projects. One would be for the design of the Beechwood pump station, stormwater pump station. Second project is the design engineering for the Bay Haven sanitary pump station and force main project. That's been on the sewer and water supervisors or superintendent's list to do for some time now. And then the last item would be an asset management plan that would really focus on the sanitary sewer system for the community. One of the strings that comes attached to this money is that you have to meet certain requirements of the grant in order for the grant to be considered complete. Otherwise, you have to refund, or you have to pay back the grant monies to the state. For the 2 projects that we're doing the design engineering on, the string that's attached to that is you have to start construction of the project within 3 years. Since these are both projects that the township has looked at doing for some time now and are very high-profile projects, I don't think starting the construction within 3 years is going to be a problem for you.
We start next week,
Right, exactly.
work on that design.
Exactly. For the asset management plan, the grant is considered complete when you complete the asset inventory, you do a condition analysis assessment of the assets in the system. You do a financial rate analysis to determine if the rate that you're charging is adequately covering your operations, your maintenance, and your replacement costs for the components of that infrastructure. So for your sanitary sewer system, it would be pump stations, manholes, pipes, force mains, those types of things. If at the end of that assessment, if it determines that you need to, that you're not collecting enough on your rates to cover those expenses, if there's a gap, a funding gap, the grant is considered complete when you implement the program within 3 years and when you implement the first step towards closing that gap. And that first step has to be at least 10% of the difference. So just theoretically, if you're charging $1 per 1,000 cubic feet of sewage and the study comes back and says you should be charging $2, you have to implement at least a 10-cent increase at the end of the project within 3 years. If you don't do that, then you're obligated to pay back the money you spent on the asset management program. So those are the strings that are attached to that particular those programs. If the board is interested, we would be willing to hold a work study session to go into a little more detail on what these projects include. If you're comfortable with them, we'll just move forward. But that's something that we certainly can schedule if you'd like to. I will let you know that the applications are due December 2nd, so it's coming in quickly. We will be coming back to the board on November 25th on that agenda, because we have to have a resolution from the township authorizing the submittal of the grant that we'll be presenting to you. And then we'll also at that time present you a copy of the standard agreement that you have to sign with the DEQ that lays out some of these strings and requirements of the grant, so that you're familiar with it before you approve the grant.
Receipt of the grant requires or only makes available the funds to us? In other words, if you apply for all 3 grants, we're awarded all 3 grants, we then have to accept them. So
Yes.
application is not acceptance.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. The resolution that that you have to adopt to send with the application says that you understand there's matching funds, that you have those funds set aside, that you can build the projects, those type of things. It doesn't obligate you to accepting the grants.
Right.
When you're selected for grant acceptance, then they send you the contract, and that's when you actually accept the grant monies.
Yep. And if I were to characterize the 3 projects, the Beechwood stormwater pump station is a high priority project. It's one that is a key part of our stormwater infrastructure. The Bay Haven pump station and force main is definitely one that's exceeded its life cycle. So both of these are projects that we'd be doing regardless. I do see value in the workshop for this board to understand the factors that go into these things. The asset management project and the creation of the 3D model of the storm sewer system definitely has value and will pay dividends in the long run, but it isn't necessarily critical. But if somebody says, well, I'll pay for 90% of it, well, then it's awfully attractive to undertake that project. So I think all 3 of these are projects that we see value in taking a look at, but I don't know when is the appropriate time for the board to have some sort of a workshop. But certainly sometime in the future, there's a need for this board to sit down and talk about, maybe in a less formal setting, the nuts and bolts of these projects, so that the board understands what those projects are and what we'd be undertaking.
I can say, I can speak for myself, I think we've discussed the Beechwood pump station at length. I think most of the board members know much more than they ever want to know about a pump station.
Right. And I agree with that.
I think we've discussed that project.
Right.
Several workshops and budget meetings.
Yep, the issue with the Beechwood pump station is probably 2 other factors that are involved. Well, actually, I'm gonna say 3. One is how we get the water to the other side of Metro Parkway. There's 2 different ways we could do that, and there's advantages and disadvantages to both. Number 2 is whether or not we improve any of the drains that are upstream or that feed into the Beechwood pump station, because there are places throughout our naturally occurring named drains where there's some blockages, woody debris, things like that could be cleaned. And certainly there's a cost associated with doing that, but we could rebuild that whole pump station and there's still gonna be areas in our neighborhoods where people say, well, yeah, but why didn't you clean back here? This drain is plugged. and every time it rains, it floods, and it takes forever to flow downstream. There could be some choke points that we'd want to include in the funding of that, and do some cleanup to the drains that are gonna get the water to the pump station and more efficiently dry out the township. Hasn't been a problem with low water levels, but when our lake returns like we all hope it will, it's gonna be a bigger issue. And then the third issue is how do we fund it? There's several different methods that Dave's proposed. I think those are the things we have to consider. The board has to decide what the appropriate way to
Well, if we're
address
getting a
those are.
75 or a 90% funding, I'm sure we can
Well, that's
come
for-
up with.
For engineering.
That's for engineering. Yeah, that's for, that's for,
Oh, I
yeah.
misread this.
Yeah, it's not, yeah, they won't build the pump station, but they'll do the engineering for the pump station. Same with, and of course, there's a fair amount of engineering in the,
Well, if they're gonna
beach-
pay for the engineering,
the behavior.
engineering's always the same, so
yeah,
let them pay for it.
yeah, that's what
Save
that's
me
what I
money.
feel, absolutely, so. But anyways, I think there will be a time, and I appreciate that offer, I think there will be a need for us to have some sort of a workshop, go over those projects, and,
We can actually get, part of the grant is we can get this application cost that we're paying you back up to 90%, correct?
That's true. The $6,000 for the application, 90% of that is eligible for reimbursement as well.
So they're basically gonna pay us to apply for a grant if we get it, so.
The state is trying to make this as easy as possible.
yep, we
Why
like
don't
it.
they bring a grant where they actually pay for the infrastructure?
Well, I will say, due to the fact that you're implementing an asset management program, that, once that is done and accepted by the state, that opens up an avenue to you to use this program for low-interest loans for construction. And when I say low interest, I'm talking 2 to 2.5%.
We can get that now.
So,
Well,
well, I'm just saying that it does open up that offer to you, that possibility to you.
yeah, and certainly, some of the grants, some of the other grants or funding opportunities that are available, your opportunity to be awarded those grants is gonna be enhanced when you say, well, we haven't just said, well, we wanna do this project. We've literally done a study of our entire system of assets, and we've structured them, put them in order. This one has this payback, so on and so forth. It holds greater weight during a future grant application process, as opposed to saying, we've just chosen this piece of infrastructure, to be able to say we've looked at the entire sanitary sewer system and realized that these few investments could have a huge impact on rates or return on investment, so forth. That enhances our chances.
But my point being that, you know, like I've always said, I have a whole cupboard full of design plans and studies and this and that, but we never seem to build it.
Well,
You know, I have plenty of engineering.
I know in my
But-
time on the board, I have not voted for or ordered any engineering that we haven't constructed, so. But I know that has happened in the past. I understand your concern. Any other discussion? Hearing none, we'll open up the floor for public comment.
Bill Serville resident. I was gonna get up here and just support this, but I guess I misunderstood the grant also. But I'm still confused. Stormwater is not something that we bill anyone for. The cost of disposing of stormwater, mostly it's the electricity, once the pump station's working. We have no methodology to collect for that, do we? Maybe I misunderstood what Mr. Newmer said, but there has to be a cost-benefit ratio, and we have to raise, I thought he said by 5% or 10% our billing. Did I misunderstand what you said?
No, I can explain it.
Yeah.
If it's acceptable to the board,
ahead.
if it's all right,
Sure.
maybe Mr. Newmer can address that.
The asset management program that we're talking about only addresses the sanitary sewer system, not the stormwater. Because you're correct, you don't have any funding mechanism in the township for stormwater.
Okay, that explains
Yeah,
it.
3 different projects.
All right,
Yep.
thank you.
All right, seeing no other public comment, we'll close the floor for public comment, move back to board comment. Any further discussion, board members? Hearing none, we've got a motion by Mr. York with support by Mr. Witt to allow Wade Trim to prepare the SAW grant application and related services not to exceed $6,000. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Thank you.
Thank you, board members.
Let's see, we've already moved D2, so we're actually, I guess what would have been D3.
D1.
No, that's
Nope.
5. That's the fifth.
Well, we
One
we
is now
switched them around.
five.
Yeah,
So
we
there's
switched
three.
them around.
We
there.
didn't do D1 yet.
Well,
No,
that
we
was,
moved it
that
to
was
five.
D1.
We moved it to five.
Oh, you, okay,
Yeah.
my mistake.
Yep, that's all right.
All right,
So next item was on the agenda as D3.
all right.
And that's regarding the supervisory contract. Board members, the GELC, POLC supervisory contract set to expire December 31st, 2013. We need to establish a negotiating committee of 3 board members to meet with and negotiate a successor agreement. I know that we've had interest from different board members throughout the time in this contract. I know most recently, Mr. Swakowski expressed an interest on this contract relative to one of the members, but I know that, I think the last supervisory contract committee was 2 full-time members and a board member.
No, it was you and I and Mr. Forlini.
Oh, okay, it was 1 full-time,
Yeah.
okay. But then the ASME contract was 3 full-timers, so certainly whoever comprises this negotiating committee is at the pleasure of this board. I think we've seen it a couple different ways. So there's certainly a need to appoint 3 board members
I'm
to
more
this
than happy
committee.
to sit on that board.
Okay. Are there other board members? I know I have typically served, I don't know if that's a requirement that the supervisor does, but I certainly have historically served. I don't know that is not inherently a requirement, no. But it would certainly be my interest to serve on that board.
I'd be happy to be involved as well, unless there's a trustee that really would like to.
No, if the 3 full-timers are gonna do it, then do it.
Okay.
All right? Is there another board member that's interested in serving on this committee?
I was interested, but like you say,
No,
if you
I-
have the full, the 3 full-time members, that's,
Jack, I'd be happy to allow you, I mean, I don't want you to feel excluded or anything
no,
like that. so-
no.
Well, so it's between the 2 of you guys, and I'm not gonna pick one or the other, so I'll let you guys decide who might be best to sit on that committee. I'm good either way. I know you're both available, so,
It's up to you, Jack. If you'd like to do it, I'd be more than happy.
Well, I did the other one, so, I'm
Yeah, go ahead.
familiar with the existing contract and that, so.
Okay.
so are you saying you would withdraw?
Yeah, Mr. Swigowski.
Okay. Are there any other board members that expressed an interest participating on that committee?
When does the committee generally meet? During
Good
the day?
question, yeah.
Yeah, usually during the day, during business hours. We usually have those meetings occurring, during township business hours.
The only issue that I can see with this contract, in all honesty, is that retirement issue with Justin.
Yep, that's,
I mean, I'm just gonna be.
Well, there's a couple of them. I think there's some other issues that we have to address, but certainly the supervisory contract has been through 2, the last 2 contracts for the supervisory union have included concessions.
They've included a lot of concessions that were never followed through to the ASME and/or fire. And, I mean, we'll see what it is, but I think that this board needs to get together in a closed session to discuss that particular contract and some of those provisions. Because we know we have that issue, and we know we have a foreman out there that's gonna be
Sure.
December 31st, but as part of this committee, I certainly would like to sit down with the board and figure that issue out.
Yeah, certainly we can add once we have a committee, I think it's important for this committee to meet, talk about a strategy. And if there's a need to sit down with the board and talk about that in a future closed session, that's fine too.
Well, you don't have a lot of time. I mean, their contract expires December 31st.
Yep.
Mr. Supervisor, I'll make a motion to appoint Mr. Jack Swakowski, Darren York, and Ken Verkest to the Supervisory Contract Negotiation Committee.
All right, we got a motion by Mr. Tominello. Is there support? Support. Support by Mr. Capro. Discussion, board members? Hearing none and seeing no public comment, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. All right, let's see, next, item D4.
I don't know, screwed up with this.
Well, D4 was D4, so that part's okay.
Seems like it's easy on paper.
Yeah. So, D4. Board members, Macomb County released their budget October 1st, and in their budget for this coming fiscal year. They have $2 million available for reconstruction of local roads in the 11 townships in the county. The funds cannot be used to pave gravel roads, nor can they be used for resurfacing. The funds must be used to rebuild local roads. The funds will be distributed in a form of a 50% matching grant. Applications for the grant are due December 31st of this year. For estimating purposes, the county's Department of Roads has proposed utilizing a cost of $240 per center line foot for the engineering, construction management, and construction of the road. During the discussion with the highway engineer or chairman of the leader of the Department of Roads, one of the roads he'd proposed was our road Hazel. And he described that as one of the potential roads that would be the target or the goal, kind of a project that they're identifying. That was his identification.
Like near 16 Mile?
Well, the Hazel, I'm almost gonna say that right now Hazel, and I'm not saying that Hazel's the only road to include, but as an example, from South River Road to, I believe, Coleridge, Hazel is in relatively good shape. I can't tell you the exact day or year, whatever, but that's been repaved and it has little, if any, potholes. From Coleridge, almost to Metro Parkway.
Right.
It's paved, but it's one of those sections of road where there's almost as much cold patch as there is original asphalt. And then just before Metro Parkway, or just before Tucker, I should say, it turns to dirt.
Right.
So, for an example, not saying it's the only road or it should be the road or what have you, I measured that, just approximate on Google, it was about 1,800 feet. So if the construction cost estimate that they propose is accurate, for estimation purposes, it's about a $432,000 project. So $216,000 would be the cost that would need to be matched. $216,000 would be the grant from the county. Now, as a general observation, if it is the intent of the county to allow grant dollars to be distributed throughout the 11 townships, you got about $2 million, you divide that by 11, plus or minus about 200,000 is probably what the scope of the project is, although there may be communities that choose not to participate, and vice versa. I looked on that road, there are more than 36 lots, but 36 addresses, or 36 homeowners. So some folks might have a double or triple lot, while others have a narrower lot. But it's an approximate cost of about $6,000 per home. I don't know that the township is in a position to come up with a $216,000, although that would be great if we were. But if the special assessment district funding model were to be used, the county has acknowledged that in their paperwork, and they're saying that you've got to get that SAD in place by March 1st, and the funding has to be available by April 1st. We've discussed internally on this project, I think, and on others, how in the past, or I don't know if we have even on this project, but some projects is, say, in a $200,000 range, the township has the ability to fund themselves and, charge a reasonable sum of interest and probably do better than we might in investments while still giving a break to residents. But that's clearly down the road if we were even to pursue this. The suggestion would be that we would ask the road committee to, for lack of a better word, spread the word that these dollars are available to see if there are any neighborhoods that'd be interested in applying for this process. I don't know that we're in a position to fund that match. We can certainly assist in that process, but they'd have to be prepared to do an SAD. And like Mr. Huth had mentioned regarding a project like this, if you've got an SAD, you really need a neighbor or a couple of neighbors in a neighborhood that say, yes, we see the value in this, we like the idea of a 50% match, we'll take this project on, and we'll help to secure, gauge the interest in the neighborhood. We don't need an SAD in place to apply for the grant, but certainly we don't want to apply for grants where there are neighborhoods that no one's interested in participating. So the thought would be that we would, solicit interest on the part of residents in the township to see if they'd like to participate in a project like this. And then either have the road committee bring those projects back to the board to address them or narrow them down. Or if there's a couple of projects, say maybe there may be 2 or 3 neighborhoods that are interested in this and are, motivated to do so, perhaps we submit all 3 projects to the county to see if all 3 could be funded. It just seems to me irresponsible to look at this and say, no, we're not interested. But I think it would be difficult in today's economy to say, yeah, we're gonna pop for the 50% match. That's a tough one too. So,
If the residents, well, let me ask a question. Is our road study done? Do we have those documents that identify all of the areas? I know that we spent money on it.
haven't spent very
I don't know that I've
much.
seen it.
Yeah, haven't spent very much, but the spending wasn't to redo the data. The data we have is Pacer data. So the short answer to your question is, yeah, we have what they call windshield data on the condition of roads on a scale from 1 to 10, if you will. So we do have that.
I remember voting on something like
Yep.
that. I think I voted no on that.
Could have been. It could be.
That was the night I said, I don't need to pay him $5,000 because I can just drive down the road, go bump, 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 and write 5.
Right. Well, that in essence,
My
that's
car's going smooth, write
that's
1.
what SEMCOG has already done. The issues that we were addressing to Mr. Newmer weren't necessarily just that evaluation, but estimates and the like. So different issue. But the short answer to your question is yes, we have that data on the roads.
Well, I have no problem. I just, when you get in these things, it always seems that when we're trying to do the right thing, which, this is great that if somebody has a road, getting a 50% match is great. But it always seems that, somebody didn't know, or sometimes these things come back to bite us. So hopefully we can get something out, maybe even throw something, they do that, a newsletter in the water bill. Maybe we could, put a little blurb if there's anybody interested in roads, or.
You could. Yep.
I don't know right now which roads meet the county's criteria, so.
Well, that was my question. What is the benchmarking used to identify, or, what is a road that is required
Yep.
rebuilding?
Yep,
Or
that's
is
a-
it any road and,
Yep, that's a good question, and that was part of the reason why I had the conversation with the chief engineer. First of all, this is a new project. State Public Act 51 requires that at least a 50% match come from somewhere other than the Department of Roads or the Act 51 dollars. So this isn't something new, but the restriction of what constitutes a road that's acceptable is something new, and that's a part of this budget, and it's something relatively new to the Department of Roads. So I would hesitate to say that at this point, I don't think the Department of Roads or the county knows whether they're gonna get a ton of response or no response. So I don't wanna be the arbiter of which road qualifies and doesn't qualify. If it's a gravel road, it doesn't qualify. They've said that pretty clearly in their documentation to us. And if it's a paved road and all they wanna do is lay a skin down, they made that clear. If that's all you're doing, Town Hall, for example, they didn't rebuild Town Hall. Rebuilding Town Hall would have involved digging it up, rebuilding the base, addressing drainage, those kinds of things, and that varies from road to road. But it could be in conjunction with infrastructure underneath. There could be a water main on that same road. I'd ask the Department of Roads that as well. So what if we've got one section of Main Street and we'd like to address the infrastructure underneath? How do we coordinate that funding? Their proposal to us was that we would propose to bid that as a sum project, because the contractor that might do the work might also do the underground work. We divide those two costs and pay, separately. But there may be a need to do that, and that might make one road more or less attractive. One road may need infrastructure work, another road may not, and that might be one of the deciding factors. So make sure you understand, some of the ambiguity of the process is because there really isn't. This isn't like the SAW grant. Dave Newmer's been telling us about the SAW grant since probably July or August, but the rules only came out a few weeks ago because the state funded it, but the state agencies that administer it are used to putting out a lot of documentation and establishing rules and going through that process. This is certainly a less formal process. So some of those are pretty good questions, but we know it's not a skin and we know it's not a gravel road. So something between those two is what they believe is the appropriate project. But it's important to note that Mr. Witt's office has been contacted by several neighborhoods saying, hey, we'd like to redo our road. We're interested in an SAD. I can't imagine that if we called them up and said, hey, guess what? We might be able to get 50% of it funded, that they're less interested, right?
Well, that's my point. I mean,
Right.
We have a
you know,
couple
sometimes
projects that
it's
are out there
double-edged.
right now, and it might be the kick in the pants to, finish it off and have that commitment there, so.
I didn't like kicking the pants, but I get you.
Well,
The point is, though, is
It'd be the carrot
Well, I
instead
mean,
of the
one
stick,
of the,
I
one of the
guess.
things is it has to be a local subdivision street.
yeah, a local
So
road,
that-
not
I
a
mean,
collector road,
right.
not a, yeah. So Metro Parkway doesn't qualify.
Interior street,
Right,
you know.
right.
There's probably several I can think of off the top of my head.
Absolutely, and I
That are
mean,
pretty bad.
sure. And some of that could be driven by that data. There may be some logic for the road committee to say, hey, you know what? We're gonna look at that, and on all the roads that fall in this range, there's a dozen of them. Let's each take a couple of roads and go knock at doors of folks and say, hey, are you aware this is available? Some of the roads that would qualify are roads where the neighbors have already come forward and approached the clerk about an SAD. So some of these aren't too hard to find because the folks have been outspoken.
So just one more question. The $2 million that has been allocated for this, these grants, is that the road commission's 50%
Correct.
portion? So that means up to $4 million.
4 million
roads
worth of
will be-
work.
Okay.
Right, yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, 2 million from the county,
So
2
it's
million
quite a
from
bit
the
then.
agency.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's not
yeah.
half of 2 million, it's actually twice that. Okay.
Absolutely, yep. And there's nothing that says that all 2 million can't land in one community, but I think that's highly unlikely. In casual conversation with leaders of other townships, other supervisors, at our last supervisors meeting, had a brief conversation about this. There was mixed interest, but there was an acknowledgement that, collectively, we don't have $2 million that we can throw at this, but.
Well, I see, if municipalities have a road repair fund, I can see them using this.
Correct,
As far as SADs, I think that's gonna be a little more challenging, right?
right,
Because, you have to get signatures, you have to start the SAD process.
right.
Although, if you look at this, and I did some calculations, for a 50-foot lot, which is pretty much standard in some of our older subdivisions, you're looking at $1,500 per side per 50-foot lot. That's probably cheaper than you can have the darn thing capped.
Correct, right,
Right.
that's the whole point, it's
So-
awful attractive.
That's what I'm saying, I
Yeah.
can't believe they're gonna take roads that are in decent shape and allow the grant, over roads that are more deteriorated, I guess.
Right, and,
So there's gotta be some criteria once all the apps are in.
right, couple of things there too, and that's a great point. One is, for those communities that already, cities have, we've seen this in some of the cities, but not as much in the townships, but for those communities that have already adopted some sort of a road millage, where there's an existing fund structure, this would be great. Say, hey, sky's the limit, do as many roads as you can. Second thing to consider is, and you may remember this from workshops that we've had with Mr. Newmer, when they look at roads, and we've got a gravel road, we've got a horrific paved road, we've got a decent paved road, and a brand-new paved road. Well, we're not gonna do anything to the brand-new paved road, that's foolish. And paving a gravel road is financially a different process, because it's hard to compare those dollars to someone who's already paid to pave the road. But the engineer will tell you that you don't fix the really horrible road first. You've put your first dollar into the road that's in bad shape, because you can cap it and you can spend maybe only 20% of the cost to redo that road compared to the really bad road. So it is nice, because this project is specifically picking out those roads that are in a horrible state of disrepair and saying, we're ignoring the engineer's advice, we're gonna focus on those first. So it is an attractive, funding opportunity.
I know if I had one of those roads in front of my house and somebody was tossing 50%, I would have.
I'd be knocking on doors.
I would have probably no problem getting signatures. You're gonna have to replace it.
It's a matter of time, and this is,
You know.
and this is by law, the most that the county can contribute toward the road. So, with Public Act $51, and there is no other source of dollars that I know of unless they just wanna give them away.
That stretch of Hazel does need to be repaired too.
Yeah,
It's pretty bad.
that's one, like I say, that was one that's kind of a poster child. I suppose that, the Department of Roads, you know, that engineer knows what roads, he regularly gets calls from residents on saying, hey, I need cold patch, and, you know, so I'm sure there are other roads that are similar, but that was one that he identified.
Yep.
And so I think if this board decided we should pursue this, I think I'd make it a point to try to contact folks I know on that road and say, hey, did you know this was available? You better start talking to your neighbors, find out, because we'd like to, you know, we can help through the application process, but we've got to know that there's interest in the residents.
we can put in for 10 projects.
Correct.
It's not limited to one or two or, I mean,
Absolutely.
if you have 10 neighborhoods, you can throw it up there and see what happens.
Yeah, if
they
the other,
all.
if
I
the other
mean,
10 townships decide to sit on their hands and not apply anything, we can be there, we're going, well, we got 2 million in the,
Right.
in the line there, so.
Yeah, so,
Well, with that said, I'd make a motion to direct the road committee to solicit and accept requests from neighborhoods to apply for the Macomb County 50% match dollars for local road reconstruction. Request must be accompanied by a commitment to pursue a special assessment district. Request to be brought back to the board for final selection for grant application.
got a motion by Mr. York, is there support?
Support.
Support by Mr. Brado. I know we've had a fair amount of discussion, but that's usually how this board operates. If there isn't any more, I'll open up the floor for public comment.
Bill Servia, resident. I think this is excellent opportunity for people that are on deteriorated roads. But I think it'd be important for the public to hear exactly what you're talking about. If I understand this, the center line means that's the total cost per lineal foot of that road. You divide that by the east half and the west half or whatever. So the lineal footage price, the estimated cost is $120 for a property owner per lineal foot, because that's the way SAD works. Would this include drainage?
You could.
If a culvert is in the wrong place, they're gonna replace that culvert and, as opposed to just paving into that culvert if it's wrong, I would assume. Unlike capping where they won't do any drainage. I would also speculate that probably there's only 3 out of those 11 townships that really have a lot of bad roads, and that's the ones that are along the water. Because of the fact that we have frost problems, I'd say part of Clinton Township, part of Harrison Township, and part of Chesterfield would probably be the ones that have the most roads that would be qualifying for this. But I would guess that the County Road Commission is the one, or Department of Roads, I should say, are the ones that are gonna decide whether or not they meet the criteria. But also, in fairness, if somebody has petition signed for 51% and they get it in first and there's 2 projects that qualify, I would say that the people that got that in first should get the money. If you feel the same way, then you put it out that way. If you do put some kind of a flyer out, that'll stimulate them even more, get it going. There's not much time to do this. March 1st is gonna be here before we know it. But I think you should go ahead with it. Thank you.
Thank you.
And that makes sense, you know, that.
Well,
No,
If somebody
first
has all
then,
their
I just
ducks,
say,
no, I'm
seeing-
sorry,
seeing
no,
other-
I'm sorry.
Public comment, we'll close the floor for public comment, move back to board comment.
I was gonna say, and you're right, it does make sense, but the thing is, Macomb County Road Commission is probably gonna be the last call. So
Right,
if I'm
sure.
the first one in, my road may not qualify, and there's 3 other road submissions
I
that came
agree.
after me, right? I mean,
Yeah,
it's gonna come down to how they're allocating the funds.
absolutely. I'm not gonna, I do not wanna be in the position to tell any resident, no, I won't apply on your behalf.
right.
Now, if the Department of Roads gives us further criteria and says, well, I'm only gonna allow this or that, well, give it to me in writing, and those are the rules I'll follow, you know? But in the absence of that, yeah, 3 folks say it, they wanna do it, then that's fine. A point of clarification, 240 per center line foot, right? That's 120 per side, but you have to remember, half of that is the grant, so it's about 60 bucks a foot.
That's
See,
cheap.
Yeah,
I'm-
so you throw out a number of 15, I was thinking 3. So really it's really 50 bucks, I'm sorry, 60 bucks a foot 50-foot lot would be 3,000, 100-foot lot would be 6,000. But again, the way that I looked at it is, the SAD, the financing of an SAD, a rule of thumb Mr. Newmer suggested is you never want the financing to exceed the length of the project. You don't want to finance a 50-year road that's only going to last 20 years. But even at a 10-year finance window, that's $600 a year. It's about $50 a month. I mean, that's a cable TV bill. It's not a, it's not a lifestyle changing commitment. But certainly the value that it adds to your home is going to be well beyond the $3,000 to $6,000, in my opinion. So I think it's also an attractive program, something I'm excited about. Any other discussion? Hearing none, we've got a motion by Mr. York with support by Mr. Brado to direct the road committee to solicit and accept requests from neighborhoods to apply for Macomb County's 50% match dollars for local road reconstruction. Those requests must be accompanied by a commitment to pursue a special assessment district, and requests would be brought back to the board for final selection for grant application. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, motion carries. Last on the agenda is what was D1 and is now, we could said it would be item D5. Board members, our building official has submitted his intention to retire. On his application, he'd indicated his last day would be November 30th, 2013. I'd recommend that we post, advertise, and interview for the position of building official. Is there a motion?
I make a motion to post, advertise, and interview for the position of building official with the recommendation to be brought back to the board for approval. And I guess as
In your
part of
motion-
that, I would have the 3 full-time officials be the ones doing the interview.
Okay, makes sense. That's
It's
typically
usually,
what
it's
we
usually our
do.
process, but let's formalize it there.
Yeah, that's good, yep. All right, we've got a motion by Mr. Witt. Is there support?
Support.
Support, was that Mr. Camperl?
Yes.
Yep, okay. Discussion, board members?
This is what I would say to this board. I would recommend that every board member please call Mr. Prock and have an outside, go to his office, sit down and talk with him, and get the reasons why he is retiring. He is being forced out, and I would just leave it at that, and if you guys would like to pursue that, I'd recommend you do that.
Any other discussion?
Just one other thing, Mr. Request. In acquiring a new building official, one of the things I think right now, the state of the building department, a few months back, we hired a buildings official or building inspector / ordinance officer. Right, in retrospect, to me, as far as I'm concerned, it was my mistake for doing that. Because ordinance is still suffering, ordinance inspection. And I'm gonna be perfectly honest, I think we should bring it back for an ordinance officer. Right now, we have one building inspector who is off, we don't know, indefinitely. One of the part-time persons had some medical problems where he can't perform all the time. So you have one person in the office who's trying to handle everything. And, I don't know about the other board members, you get calls from people that I can't get nothing done. I can't get any ordinance work, or I've got a complaint, nobody will come out. And it becomes a problem, and, if we're gonna sell this community, we've gotta clean up some of this, some of the areas that are really bad. And, to me, I have no problems going out, because once we get a building official, it's gonna take him a while to get his feet wet with the community and everything, so, we're still gonna be suffering for ordinance enforcement. So I think that's something we have to look at.
Well, one of the issues with our current building official is that the ordinance officer is not under his purview.
Since when?
since Mr. Verkest went and told Steve that you report to me.
Wow, I wish I was a part of that
Well,
conversation.
if VJ was sitting here, he would say that.
So did he say that to
And-
Steve, or did he say that to
I wish,
VJ?
I wish VJ
I'm just-
and I were a part of that conversation then, I guess. I'd like to respond to Mr. Switkowski's point. I agree with you 100% with the exception of one thing. I don't regret hiring Steve.
Oh, I have
I'm
no
sorry.
objection to that.
No, I'm sorry, let me back up. I don't regret hiring a building inspector as opposed to an ordinance officer. Because had we only hired an ordinance officer right now, we would have only one person in the township that is licensed to perform building inspections. As you pointed out, our building inspector is out on leave, and our part-time inspector, due to other issues, is not available. So I couldn't disagree more with your statement. I agree with the last half of your statement 100%. Ordinance enforcement is important. We got through the noxious weed season this year better than we have in several years. And our ordinance enforcement officer has, when available to do ordinance enforcement, has performed pretty well. But I've identified, or I've been able to see that he's also done a pretty good job at building
Well,
inspection.
I
Right.
agree with you.
And if he didn't have
You
that
know,
ability, I don't know what we'd be doing, because right now, we have 3.5 people who can, we basically have an employment relationship with 3.5 people that are qualified to do building inspection, and 1.5 of them are unavailable. I mean, that's
Mr.
almost a
Marquez?
50% reduction.
And I apologize for interrupting. I just want to say, we have ongoing litigation with the current building official. I think there's a motion right now to advertise and post for a job. I don't really know that it warrants a whole bunch of discussion, because I'm afraid it's going to be an issue later. I think we should consider voting on
It's
it.
gonna be an issue later.
Well, let's not help it be an issue later.
I think it's
There's
an
a-
issue right now, and that's what I told this board. I think every board member needs to call him and sit down and talk with him. And then you can
fine,
get
you
it
made
from
your
them
con-
instead of
you-
having
Mr. York, you
people
made
say, you know, oh, you're lying, this and that. Hear
Okay.
from the horse's mouth, and then you make your decision.
All right, you've made your comment, but regardless, this motion is about whether or not to post. Someone has
Correct.
put a resignation in, and I think the board should take action on that and consider it, rather than discussing things that are outside of what this motion should be about.
I think Mr. Swikowski, we're discussing the department in general. And I brought up several times, you know, that, you know, with one of our key people who is looking like they're gonna be out on the long term, I've brought up several times that we need to hire somebody to replace that person in the interim. That could be a year, you know, a lot of people, they go out, it's 2 years. And our building official, regardless of whether he's leaving or not, he spends most of his days, a lot of his days out doing building inspections. And regardless of anything else on this agenda tonight, we need to address the staffing in that department as it's going on now, 3 and 4 months now, without having that building inspector. I think we need to temporarily post for that position, like we've done many times in the past when there's a long-term person out on for whatever reason.
And of course, in the past, we've done that, but only recently, the part-time person that we've employed for many years had an incident that's made him no longer available, so that has exacerbated the problem.
Well,
Certainly
that's
not
my
a problem
point.
that's existed for 3 to 4 months.
Maybe we need to look beyond that.
We have a few people that we use. It's not just one individual. So I know they've reached out to some other people to get the work done.
Well, Mr. Huth doesn't normally speak up that bluntly and that directly, so I think we should maybe take his advice and go pass this motion
I
and
don't want to,
move on.
but I am.
All right, we've discussed it at length. Is there any more discussion?
I'll have my
Hearing none,
turn at
we'll open up the
deposition.
floor for public comment.
Yes, you need a building official, so of course you need to post and eventually hire someone. But I would point out, Mr. Switowski, I believe you and Mr. Tominello were adamant that you were hiring an ordinance officer / part-time inspector. So I concur with Mr. Verkest, if we're gonna hire someone else, they need to wear both hats. The last Thursday, housing met, we had no new cases. Those cases were all brought together, the packets were put together by Erin Hardcastle, who of course she's on leave right now. We need someone to fill those shoes because we're falling by the wayside. We have housing that has multiple violations. They need to be brought forward and, addressed. So I think if you're gonna hire someone, I don't see a problem hiring them full-time. You can always lay someone off. They don't have to be temporary.
I think this is for a building official, not like.
No,
an
I'm talking about,
ordinance
I know
officer.
you,
This is the-
but you suggested that tonight's as good a time. You can add it on there as you can advertise for that at the same time. We've been going on for a long time without sufficient help in there, and as Mr. York pointed out, Mr. Parock has been 6 hours every day out in the field doing inspections, which that's not his job. So other parts of his job have been neglected because of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no other public comment, we'll close the floor for public comment and move back to board comment. Is there any further board comment? Hearing none, we've got a motion by Mr. Witt with support by Mr. Caprell to post, advertise, and interview for the position of building official with a recommendation to be brought back to the board for approval and to define the interview committee as the 3 full-time officials. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Next on the agenda is public comments. If there are any public comments, the floor is open for that now.
Sir, were you here for public comment? No? All right.
Okay.
Well,
Hearing
there's a
no-
new face, normally they're here until the end to say something.
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, I didn't know if you knew the rules or not, so, we don't wanna, if you wanted to say something, feel free.
Seeing no public comment, we'll move back to board comment. Is there any board comment? Hearing no board comment?
Well,
Oh, sorry.
just one thing, Mr. Chairman. I know there was an issue that took place on last Friday involving the township, and I guess I'd like a copy of the resolution of that came down.
There is no resolution currently. There's a proposal, and I believe it has to be brought back to the board for approval.
Approval, okay.
Yeah. I received it today about 3 o'clock,
All right.
so. All right,
Fine.
any other discussion? Is there a motion to adjourn?
Motion to adjourn.
Support.
We've got a motion by Mr. York with support by Mr. Swakowski to adjourn at about 8:30. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, motion carries. Meeting adjourned. Thanks, board.